Good evening.
Good evening.
I can't tell you how honored I am I'm already moving around. Barbara was saying, be careful because the Zoom will cut off if I'm not in the right place, and I'm already shifting my seats around. So thank you. My name is Reverend Condra. I'm here from Evanston, Illinois, and I'm the chaplain of the week at Chautauqua for the first time, and kind of blown away by that. I'm just really delighted to be here today. I know that the theme for the week and from the materials I got was based on a book by John F. Kennedy called Profiles in Courage, which I'd never read before. But I was trying to imagine, all right, how do we talk about courage in a context from unity? And what sort of rose for me is that we talk about sort of Christ consciousness or cosmic consciousness or universal consciousness or oneness consciousness, sort of however you want to sort of phrase that really high level of being available to spirit. And we talk about, or Charles Fillmore taught about a way that we can sort of achieve that, a way that we can move into and practice certain qualities that we are inherently given. And so I'm curious, how many of you are well familiar with 12 powers and been in unity? Yeah, so this is probably going to be a review, but I'm hoping we can do some kind of back and forth and engaging in conversation around it as we begin to explore how, by developing our 12 powers or our 12 faculties or abilities, they've been called a lot of different things, but how we develop those qualities of character of being so that we can show up courageously and transform the planet in the way that so many of the speakers this week have been speaking to. So that was kind of my approach when I came through this, or when I was percolating about what to talk about with you today. So I'm hoping it'll be an exchange. Please feel free to interrupt or contradict me if you have a different approach or a different way of thinking about these things. But I would love to have it be as interactive as we can, since we're a fairly small group. And we can hear you, Janine, a little bit. So if there's anything you want to pipe in with, please feel free. Barbara, would you mind passing out? We'll start with a more of a framework for how Charles Fillmore really, or how I understand Charles Fillmore developed these particular qualities, these 12 qualities that he referred to as divine ideas, that these are ideas that are direct kind of revelations from God. And they are divine ideas, and they are the source of the good in the world, the source of the good in our lives, the source of all good that kind of happens. And everybody is born with these qualities. And I can remember when I first began to study them, wondering, well, what do you mean? Why these 12? What's that about? And Myrtle actually, I think, came up with the idea in prayer work that these are the 12 ideas that are direct. Without these particular divine ideas, we could not exist. So it's certainly true that there are other divine ideas than the 12 that we're going to talk about tonight, but these are the 12 that are sort of essential for existence, for beingness. Everything else, all of the other good stuff that we appreciate that's sort of not on the list of these 12, Charles regarded as derivations, right? Certainly happiness might be considered a divine idea. That's goodness, that's something we all aspire to. But we know that there are people on the planet who are not happy. So it's not essential for beingness. On the other hand, love, which Fillmore described as the attractive force of the universe, that which sort of holds all things together. Without love, there would be no existence. We can't exist without that. So that sort of helped me to understand why these qualities, and I always thought beauty ought to be a divine idea or a divine quality or a spiritual thing. And it's not on the list. And I think that sort of helps us explain why, because certainly beauty is a divine idea. It's something that we all aspire to, appreciate, and yet we all know there are things in existence, even people in existence, that aren't beautiful. And I don't mean even physically, but spiritually, emotionally, that there's not beauty, that tends to be pain or even. So it's not quintessential to existence. That's how Charles sort of arrived at these. The other framework out of which this sort of arises is Charles was very intuitive about his approach to the Bible. Often we describe it as metaphysical, beyond the literal explanation of what's in the Bible. He sort of would listen intuitively to what the deeper meaning might be, what the metaphysical, beyond the physical meaning you be there. And so of the reason he came up with 12 is because through sort of divine revelation, the dreams that he was having, there were associations with each of these 12 with the 12 disciples. And Jesus, sort of the completeness of Jesus' ministry involved 12 disciples. And as Charles sat in contemplation and meditation about these divine ideas and what might be expressing through him, it was about these 12 disciples. So, some of them are easy. John was the beloved disciple, right? The one that most beloved of Jesus. So John is the disciple that represents love in the context of his framework. Is that any of that new information for any of you? You've all kind of understood this before? Let's review. Well, I guess what we ought to do now is move into kind of a discussion of what these essential 12 ideas are. These that are essential to existence and being is. And for those of you in the room, we've got handouts. And I was just hoping that we'll make it a little bit more, I'll make you work a little bit at it and sort of chart out your own diagram. And what I'm hoping is that it's something you'll find of value. We'll talk a little bit more about ways that we can practically use these 12 divine ideas in our own spiritual practice. How is it that when we're wrestling with something, when we're facing some challenge, that these divine ideas, we can, the word that's often used is activate those. There are ways that we can bring them more fully into expression or in our own awareness so that we can live more like or embody the kind of high-level consciousness, Christ consciousness, oneness consciousness that Jesus demonstrated so beautifully. So I'm going to move over to the board. If you're on Zoom, you might be able to see it. And if you want to, hopefully, you've got colored pencils and stuff, just sort of fill it along the way. And we'll have a map that we can begin to use. The other thing that in Charles' metaphysics and his understandings and his meditation and his dreams, he had the experience of, as he sort of entertained these divine ideas, he had the experiences of bodily manifestation. So like in some ways, Charles Fillmore was way ahead of the curve for most of us in that body, mind, spirit connection. Like he would, as he was contemplating the ideas or experiencing what it is to engage the imagination, which is one of the 12 powers, he had a felt experience of what that was in his physical body. So that's where this body map on what you have there is a really rough idea of a human figure, right? And the little stars indicate where Charles experienced the sensation of that particular idea. And I found that it's really helpful. And for most part, it sort of lines up exactly with what my experience of those qualities is. And I haven't experienced them all. For me, one of them here is understanding. And when I think about understanding, I don't know that actually, no, I kind of do. Let's talk through it as we go. Okay, so we'll start at the top. We'll just move through. So I didn't leave room for it, but the biggest, most gigantic star at the top, like even as a crown, that would be like Christ consciousness level enlightenment, right? That's where all of these 12 powers are fully integrated and we are functioning and believing and are holding the kind of consciousness at a level that Jesus did. That's one of the things that distinguishes unity from some of the more mainstream religions is that we regard Jesus as the divine example, the master teacher, and what he embodied, what he was able to accomplish in his time on the planet is possible for all of us if we were but as in tune and awake to our proper use of these spiritual powers, right? So Jesus was not the exception, but was sort of the divine example. And so we aspire to live by some of the same principles that he did. That would be living in Christ consciousness. At that point, we too could ascend when we get there. Not there yet. I don't know, maybe some of you have had that experience. So let's see. At the very top, I'm going to need my cheat sheet. Thank you. Got it. Will. At the very top is will. At the top of the head, and where Charles would sort of experiences that is almost at the crown of the head, right at like my hairline here is what I'm imagining. Which sort of makes sense because in my experience, once we have made a decision to move in a particular direction, we've been guided to reach out to a friend and express something lovingly. There's something like there, we might have that intention, but without the will to do it. Like that comes from mind, like pretty high up. I've already got this decision, but to sort of take the action and make sure that I follow through with it is an act of will. So that's where the center of will is, right up here. It's where Charles identified it. Let's see, right under will is, and go ahead and fill these in if you want to, on your sheets, is the divine idea of understanding. And understanding is sort of, it's sort of that knowing beyond knowing. Understanding is once, we can be knowledgeable about the topic, but we really don't have a accurate context or meaning to give to it, right? So understanding is the faculty through which we can bring knowledge into wisdom. As we understand the context, as we understand the meaning, then we can begin to come from a higher level of perception about what it truly means and how we embody that. And I like that in this location because it reminds me of like third eye. I haven't like ever felt my third eye quivering or anything, but as we'll do a meditation a little bit, and we'll just focus on sort of where the third eye would be, and that's sort of the seat of understanding. Let's see. So next. This is sort of right in the center of the head. And I don't know, he probably identified a gland that went there, but I'm just going to say right in the sort of center of the head, Charles seated that as the power of imagination. Right? That faculty, that quality, that ability that we have to image something sort of out of the ethers. We can begin to create pictures. We can begin to have ideas about what we might want to bring forth or what we want to see in our lives. Basically, all of the desires of our hearts really first arise in imagination. So you think about, even wanting a new car, like where does that desire originate? You begin to imagine yourself driving around in it. You can imagine the smell of it. There are pictures that we give, and the faculty of imagination in the center of the head is where that arises. Let's see, then after imagination, and I love this. This is the seat of faith. And what I like is how closely it's associated with imagination. Because in some ways, imagination and faith are very related. Like as we begin to have faith in the outcome of, Rushdi's recovery, right? As we want to have faith in sort of the wellness and wholeness that's going to come out of illness or out of violence, as we have faith in that, it begins with sort of a picture of what that might be like, but that's a little bit nebulous, right? It's through faith, this power that we have to shape that idea that we've had, that imagining that we've had, that we actually bring it into fuller expression. So faith it's a little bit sort of firmer grasp around it, and it's actually an activity of mind that starts to, Charles would get real cosmic about it, but like the divine substance of the universe, the cosmic dough, I've heard it described as that, begins to take form as we can sort of hold that with a degree of faith. Let's see, then back of the head, I think this is anybody who's a biologist or anatomist, is that pituitary gland? I don't know what the pituitary, it's not, okay, forget I said that. I'm not sure what's back there, what part of the brain is back there? Medulla, maybe?
That's the amygdala, the amygdala, that's inside.
Inside this, so would it make sense, help me with the context here. So zeal, like that place where we get excitable, that place where we can bring energy and excitement to the work that we're doing. That would be the amygdala. That's the sort of the primitive part of the brain, right? That we're.
A woman on Monday talked about, fear and courage, and she talked a lot about doing scientific studies of measuring the size of amygdala in people who are experiencing these intense emotions of fear
or afraid, or not, right? That was the other thing she said, that some had no fear response.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. Okay, this is it's not a non sequitur, but kind of I'm put a pin in this part. The other thing about these powers is that as we use them with the light of sort of Christ's mind, of divine energy, we use them for good. But it's also possible to use these same powers for ill, right? Think about if you're a parent and your child is out late at night, she was supposed to be home 3 hours ago, you haven't had a phone call yet, your imagination's going to kick in, and you're going to be probably imagining all of the bad stuff that might be happening to her, right? So that's the use of the imagination, but without the light of higher understanding, of higher consciousness. And that's true with all of these. We can be zealous about accomplishing something, but we can be zealous in a way that extends hate or extends animosity. So part of what we do in our practice of these powers is to make sure that we're aligning our use of them with the highest and best, with what we know to be true about the nature of God, which is always good. Yeah, make sense? Okay, next one down. This one always kind of confused me. It's the power of power. That's why I kind of like, and some later teachers have recategorized these, and rather than call them powers, we call them faculties or abilities or gifts. But the power of power, the faculty of power, it's in the back of the neck. It's really the throat, and it's the notion that it's how we create movement. And not necessarily physical movement, but it's how we move from sort of ideas and faith, and it's how we move it into form by speaking it into existence. We give the power of our thought. We give our thoughts the power of manifestation through like our voice or vocal cords. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that one holds there. This one's easy. So Charles felt this one sort of to be right at the heart, which, I mean, who doesn't? That love is where we typically would experience, if we're having sort of a genuine outpouring of emotion and fondness, and attraction happens here at the love center. And at the same time, if we're feeling heartache or heartbreak, it's like that. So the lack of love can also be experienced sort of in that back of the heart. So that's an easy one to cite and understand. Let's see, next is wisdom. I think Charles actually called this judgment. I like wisdom better. And I like, that it's, in terms of like locating it, I love the notion that sort of wisdom happens when you have a gut feeling about whether something's right or wrong. That's how I feel that, like you feel that right in the pit of your gut. So that's where wisdom sort of allows. And again, wisdom is different from knowledge, but there is, it's sort of our capacity to choose and know between sort of yes and no, right and wrong. Wisdom is that capacity we have to be able to, I believe it's kind of where guidance is seated as well. Like, if you're sitting in meditation, you've been holding some kind of question, or there's some challenge that you're facing, and you can just sort of be present to it, like wisdom will arise, that I get it. I feel it. I understand the way I'm moving forward. So that's the power of wisdom. Back here at the small of the back, that's our center of strength. And it's not just physical strength, although that's easy because you put your back into it when you're really wanting to work hard, right? So that's an easy way to kind of remember the side of it. But it's really the strength and the resilience and the fortitude to sort of follow through with whatever wisdom and judgment and love what decisions we've made out of those powers, right? So strength is the way to continue to move forward and move ahead. Let's see. Next, Fillmore said this was cited right at the belly button. The quality we have, or the capacity we have to order our lives, to know that. And I like the belly button thing because if you think about how in the development of a fetus, there is an order to how nutrients and so that's how I sort of think of order in terms of physicality of it. And in terms of as a spiritual quality, what it really does is allow us to order, to prioritize, to make sense of, to bring a sense of organization even. So if for instance, now if you're in a state of confusion about something, if it's just sort of distracting, that might be a time that you might call forth your quality or power of order, or practice with or work on developing the capacity for order. Let's see, this one is one it's really center renunciation. Did I spell that right? Or release is an easier form. So it's basically sort of the digestive system, right? It's physically and physiologically, it's how we get rid of the bodily waste that we don't need. But that's also a really effective and powerful and necessary spiritual power as well. Like, think how much we hold on to things that are to our detriment, right? Hold on to anger, hold on to resentment, hold on to old ways of doing things that don't serve us anymore, old ideas. It's through this power of renunciation that we can really free ourselves from that which would block us from being able to express the kind of love that Jesus demonstrated. So renunciation is a big one for me anyway.
Is that located in the body?
Digestive system, bowels. And then this is life, power of life. And it's seated in the most tasteful description I've heard is the generative organs. It's seated in the generative organs, like the power to bring to life, to give life to, is seated in there, in that. And it would be, I don't know, I'm almost thinking more of the ways I use it when I'm struggling with something. But if I find I'm in a dark space, if I'm feeling a little bit depressed or low energy, like life, to bring life into an appreciation for life is a way that I sometimes move through that stuff. So let's see, what do I want to do now? Any questions? Anything new in that? You're all Unity.
You know, what's amazing to me is I've been in Unity off and on, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. I've never heard of this, or I was asleep when they gave it. Really, I've never heard of any of this.
Oh, yay!
All those Sundays in the Unity Church, all those workshops, all those weekends. I never heard of it.
And the 12 Powers wasn't, yeah. It was foundational to the work that Charles had done. And I think back in the day, certainly Barbara has been a licensed Unity teacher back when all of this was required, like 12 Powers was foundational. And then about the time, and I have to say, I've been through a kind of a conversion about it. When I found that it's kind of a fun thing, and yeah, these things in the body, but it all seemed like just kind of a really good Sunday lesson theme, and it got kind of gimmicky, like even so that, and not, I don't mean to say gimmicky exactly, but like to make it accessible for kids, we started ascribing colors to all these now. So in some churches, they'll have a whole month where they'll all be wearing the same color. They'll wear pink for love, and they'll wear red for life, representing blood. And so there's a whole association that I got to the point that's like, well, Charles, it was a really, clever idea for a theme, but I'm not so sure that it's all that grounded in like truth, spiritual truth. And then as I was preparing for this class, I was going back through some old videos I found online by a teacher named Ed Grable. Grable? Was that his name? Ed Grable. Marvelous teacher. I have a guy who learned from him in my church and extols Ed Grable, but I had not seen these videos before. And that's where I got the information about, Charles, how he defined these 12 as the ones that are divine ideas directly from God, as opposed to filling in with some other ones. And so it has more meaning for me now than it has at other points in my Unity journey. And I think maybe that's true for other ministers too. We often say, if you've been to one Unity church, you've been to one Unity church. We have 5 basic principles, and those pretty much hold across all the movement. But after that, it's really a flavor of what the minister and the teaching staff brings. And there's so much, part of the beauty of Unity is that we're open to growth and evolution. And there's been so much that's happened scientifically in some ways that validates a lot of this, and so I think maybe it's not as emphasized as much as it once was, but I'm glad it's new for you. It feels like, okay, I've brought you something that I hope maybe will delight and
give you some one step away from thinking you made it all up.
Yeah, and that's how I felt about, well, Charles just made all that up. And having worked with some of these ideas, at my church, we built a patio with a seat wall around it. And one of the members, who is a longtime member and well immersed in the 12 Powers, he wanted to have each of these words kind of engraved at different points on it. So we've got this beautiful seat wall with each of these words kind of attached there. And we've done some amazing meditations there where people might have been going through some kind of challenge, some kind of healing challenge, and I'd have them pick a word and go sit by it, and just touch the word and move into a spaciousness or a receptivity to getting some more direction or some more, sort of spiritual juju around that. And there have been some really powerful demonstrations as people start to embrace it. So, it's, in some ways, I think the power of the mind to change, to transform, to create healing, to it almost doesn't matter, because God is so much bigger than any word or any concept that we could attach to it. It almost doesn't matter what avenue or path we use to connect with it. But if it's useful, and if we find it gives us results in our lives, then go for it. So,
Right on what you're saying right now, I think of Kundalini Yoga and the chakras.
mm-hmm.
So, has there been any discussion about how?
Yes.
Oh, thank
Actually, I believe somebody wrote a book, a Unity person, on combining the 12 powers and chakras.
Okay.
I have done work on that, yes.
Probably the colors are all integrated into that
Yes,
too.
the colors, right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, if I didn't know that this was, you didn't write the word unity, up there, everybody knows that they're here for unity, but I don't go to a unity church, but this fits into, to me, this could be philosophy, psychology, it's really physiology. Almost any discipline could take those words and really, they would have meaning. I think it's important that it doesn't seem exclusive to unity teachings. It seems like you could,
Yeah, it has a broader application.
right.
That's why, I was even a little bit sort of couching my terminology when I was saying Christ consciousness, right?
And I mean that in a
Universal
positive way,
consciousness.
because that means it's just so much more accessible to everybody,
Yeah, which actually was what Unity was designed for, right? Unity was never going to be churches. It was always about practical application of Christian principles and Jesus' teachings, and so yeah, I love that it's that sort of open. Yeah, that's why I was talking with somebody on the porch the other day. It was a Jewish man. I was talking to the wife. She was Jewish, and her husband, I think, was Episcopalian. Neither of them particularly practicing, but they ended up at a Unity church so that they could be married in a church. In part because I think the teachings that we have and the ways in which we do ministry and pastoral care are universal. It's yeah.
Well, first, I turned off the air, so if you get hot, yell, and I will turn it back on, because it was hard to hear you.
Good.
But if it gets hot, somebody yell, and I will turn it on.
Okay.
Second, I learned these a long time ago when they were, I guess, in vogue. But as somebody who's very interested in healing and health, I have found that these often, when you're having trouble with one of the principles, especially release, you can't let go of your past. A lot of people have troubles with their lower intestines. Or, if you're having an issue with love, the heart, and you call upon these powers to strengthen that part of your body. I thought the power was your thyroid, but it's the throat, right? So people who have thyroid issues often can't speak their truth. They lose their voice, their physical voice anymore. And there's a lot of correlation if you do studies about how to use these powers to increase your health. So I think they're right on too from a healing standpoint.
The physiological
Yeah,
part of it too.
yeah.
That's cool. Well, Louise Hay, you can hear, has a whole book about that, right? That every physical malady somehow has an emotional, spiritual, physiological kind of cause. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really looked, but yeah, the gastrointestinal things probably are about letting go of or holding on to something that's toxic. Yeah. Huh. Okay, what do we do now? How much time I got?
We have a half hour.
Oh my goodness. So we could either, if I move to sit down,
I'll do
can I just carry it, or is that?
I will do it.
Thank you. So we could either do a kind of 12 powers meditation, where we could move through those, and maybe we can do both. And then what I would love to maybe, and I don't know if this is meditative or by discussion, I'll kind of leave it up to you. You guys seem pretty open to discussion, so I really love that. To maybe talk about if there's some prayer requests that you're holding in your heart, or some that you would like to discuss and a little clarity about. We'll talk through like which of these 12 powers might be helpful to be able to move through that, or to find some insights about it. And we can suggest, I'll get Barbara to help me too, we can suggest some affirmations, or you all can, you've got plenty of experience with this, it sounds like. And maybe kind of help each other in terms of how we're working in our prayer life, and maybe applying some of these principles. So what do you think?
How about a meditation, a little meditation, how about a little both?
Do
Meditation
a
and a
little
little
both.
discussion.
Okay, we'll pack it all.
We can handle it.
It's funny, I love how, I was a little concerned because like literally there are ministers who have done like 12 powers for a whole year of sermons, and here we are, bam, 1 hour. I don't know, I hope you're not being cheated out of a deeper understanding. So let's see, if we're going to meditate, I would invite you just assume the pose, whatever position you use to be most available to the presence, to spirit, to guidance, then assume that. And just start by just one deep breath. Let's do that together, like maybe 3 deep breaths. And inhale and exhale. And the second one, inhale and exhale. And one more, 3, inhale and exhale. And now just scan your body. And without manipulating or changing anything at all, just begin to notice. Maybe in those 3 deep breaths, have you felt a sense of expansion? Or perhaps maybe a quieting of mind and heart. And just keep paying attention to your breath. Notice the quality of it. Notice any expansion or contraction. And we'll begin with just an affirmation. I'll ask you to repeat it silently, but an affirmation to hold. I am that I am. I am that I am. I am a divine creation of the Most High. Nothing separates me from my highest good or from divine mind. I am that I am. And we'll just let the power of that knowing, of that statement, kind of wash over us as we move through each of these 12 powers, bringing focus and attention and intention to activating them more fully here and now. So begin by moving your attention to your forehead. If it's comfortable, you can even reach up and touch your forehead, kind of at your hairline. And we now activate the divine power of will, that capacity to follow through, to do what we know is in our highest and best interest. My will is thy will. Breathe in deeply, breathe out, and just move your fingers or your hands down, or in your imagining, to the space right between your eyebrows where the third eye would be. We were talking about an Eastern tradition here. This is the seat of understanding. My capacity to understand is divine. My capacity for understanding is grounded in truth. My understanding is one with that of God. Breathe in deeply, breathe out. And next, shift your attention to the very center of your head. This is the seat of imagination. Through my power of imagination, I see as God sees. I hear as God hears. I imagine life as it can be, not just life as it is. Breathe in, breathe out, and then just shift your focus just slightly down into the rear of your head. This is the seat of faith. I have faith in God that all is well. My faith is a power to give shape to divine ideas. I am faith. Breathe in, breathe out. Next, move your attention to the very back of the skull. This is the center of zeal. The most famous unity affirmation for zeal is, I fairly spring forth with zeal and enthusiasm to do that which is mine to do. I am zeal. Breathe in, breathe out. Next, move your attention to the back of the throat. This is our center for power, where we speak truth, where we put in motion that which we hold in mind. I have the power to create only good in my life. Breathe in, breathe out. Next, move your attention to the heart space, center of your chest, just behind it. I am created in love to express love. I am the embodiment of love in the world. I am love. Breathe in, breathe out. Now shift your attention to the upper belly, the seat of wisdom. The space where knowledge comes together with a deeper knowing. The wisdom of God is available to me in all my choices. I am wisdom. Breathe in, breathe out. Shift your attention just a couple inches down to your belly button. This is the seat of the power of order. I have the power to order my life as God would. Divine order guides my steps and choices. I am ordered. Breathe in, breathe out. And then shift your attention to the lower back, sacrum, seat of strength. This is the source of the strength which moves us forward. Strength that provides resilience. My strength is divine strength. My strength comes only from God. Breathe in. Breathe out. Next, focus on the lower belly, where the intestines are, our digestive system. This is our power to release, the power of renunciation, so that we let go of anything that might not serve us. I release whatever blocks my good. I am the power of renunciation. Lastly, we move to the center for life. This is the area between the loins. The life of God is vibrant and energized in me. Divine life flows freely through me and as me. I am one with all life. Breathe in. Breathe out. And as we prepare to bring this time of meditation to a close, I invite you to just return your attention to your breath. Notice the quality and the pace, the depth. Just scan your entire body and see if there isn't a sense of being activated, a sense of brightness or lightness, a sense of presence or grace. We give thanks for the awareness that this presence, this grace, this ability to know truth at every level of being is always available to us. And we are grateful. Amen. We feel like dancing? Didn't bring a soundtrack for that, but we could. So now I would love to maybe entertain a conversation about maybe a prayer request that you have personally or collectively, or that's been on your mind and heart as we've been journeying through this week of delving into and experiencing and learning about courage. And let's just see if we can't sort of bring some focus to those prayer requests using these divine powers. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just thought, it goes down my mind, but I'd like to be in real peace with the political season coming up, elections. Just want to be very much at peace. Feel probably wisdom is what I would need to embrace it. But what would you say, just in general, being at peace and letting the outer world be?
Well, I love that you've identified wisdom, so I'd like to dig into that a little bit. How is it that by having wisdom, that would bring a greater sense of peace?
Well, I'm assuming if I hold on to wisdom, you just kind of see everything for what it is, all the players on the stage, and you know there's divine order underneath it, and you don't get too wrapped up. So the wisdom just to discern not to get a emotional over, well, there's a fine line. I mean, I want to care. It's not that I don't want to be emotional. Maybe that's not. I just want to be at peace.
So wisdom, remember, Charles also used the word judgment. So in some ways I'm like, yes, that's perfect, because one, you're wanting to be able to judge like the relative importance of how much of this is all just noise that I don't need to invest in at all. But I also want to be discerning enough and wise enough to be able to make wise choices in my own voting, in my own. So I think wisdom is a great one, because it sort of moves you into a space of being active and present in our political process, but from a higher consciousness of a higher level of engagement. Can we hold to this? Or do you have another example or an idea for this one? Yeah, good. I would love to, because I think there are other powers that might be helpful for establishing peace, peace of mind, peace of heart.
No, it's the same one that you were just talking about, wisdom. And it immediately struck me from prayer that is said in recovery rooms. That's the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, wisdom to really live it. And it's not easy getting to that third piece, because what can you control, what can't you control? Can you have the courage to look at this, which could be one of the other strengths, but realistically, it is wisdom. Wisdom to know how to discern these political currents and remain peaceful or serene during this time period. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
I say that prayer every day, and if I don't say it every day, I say it twice every day.
Yeah, it's a powerful one. And yeah, it goes right to that discerning. Wait, is this something I can change or I can't? And yeah, affirming the wisdom and judgment to be able to discern that is huge. I also think then once that's there, once we've sort of done that, I think that renunciation is a huge piece of moving into that space of peace, right? So, okay, now I've discerned what's important to me. I've discerned what I need to pay attention to. And through renunciation and release, we can let go of the rest, not get caught up in that. I have to remind myself, oh yeah, I released that. You get caught up in the thing, oh, that's wrong. I want to be that political, oh, that politician. Okay, I've been through it. I know that's not productive. Release that.
Do you consciously release it when you're doing it?
If I catch myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, verbally.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's helpful even to rip something up, if there's a lot of energy behind it. That's what our burning bowl ceremony, those of you in unity, part of our New Year's celebration is we release the past and we write down all the stuff that we don't want to carry forward and we burn it up like that. That's renunciation. That's a release process. So there can be rituals that we put in place that can support that, and just I think of those not as having power in and of themselves, but they're like touchstones. That reminder that, oh yes, I don't need to pay attention to it anymore. I've let that go. Here's another way that I'm reminding myself that it's just not a productive or fruitful train of thought to be running there.
I think it was your Sunday talk, you were talking about 1,000 courage and about the trajectory, historically, the way things are moving. And for me, it's helpful to think about Civil War, segregation, women's right to vote, slavery, and all those things that used to be, that aren't anymore. And to think of when people were immersed in that conflict, I imagine it felt something like what we have now. But when you look at the resolution, who is it that talks about the arc of history? To me, it's the faith that you believe that God is all good and it's going in that direction. direction, because there is no other direction. It's just a matter of the pace. And the interruptions that happen all the way there. And also, to me, the contrast helps people know when you see what you don't want, it sometimes clarifies what we prefer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. So yeah, faith that we are in an evolutionary process, one that's not unlike what we've been through before, and like the reminder of that can sort of bolster a faith that we're in that process again. That
I've got somebody who could help.
okay.
I'm now 82 and healthy. No, been healthy. I'm wondering when the end comes. When is my end coming? And it's taking more and more of my thought process. When is my end coming? How will it come?
Is it? Well, the first thing I would say is that, well, it is for all of us, and none of us really knows. So is the inquiry coming out of a place that is creating anxiety for you, or is it more about curiosity?
Curiosity. I'm part of that group that thinks it's a better place. I'm going to a better place. But I am curious about how is it going to come. There's going to be pain involved. There's going to be discomfort to the family involved. There's going to be hassle involved. Or I just slip away.
Yeah, I'm going back to Barbara and I both have a dear friend, Martha Creek, who taught here last year, who's very into like both and.
Both what?
Both and. That yes, it's completely natural that we would be curious about that. And yes, it's completely natural that we might have some anxiety or fear about how it's going to unfold. And so I think maybe a helpful way to move through a prayer process is a level of acceptance about this is what it is. Like I'm probably always going to have some level of wondering. And until it happens, there's going to be that unknown part where the fears and anxieties may creep in. So can I be present to what is, maybe with a loving heart, knowing that, or gosh, any of them right now. You expressed a belief that something better is beyond, which I would say rests in faith, and maybe even a little bit of imagination as you're going to picture what that's like. I don't know if I've tried. I don't have a good picture. You know that's one of the questions that comes up a lot among Unity. Like, what does Unity believe about the afterlife? And basically, the answer is, well, we believe there is one, but we don't go much beyond that. And that's not even universal. There are some people, I think, in Unity who just don't know or don't answer. So I haven't really answered your question. How is it that? Help me with the question again.
The question basically was how to handle the coming. Just let it happen, which I frankly what I'm doing. Or I'm not that worried about it, but it does, My daughter, or my sister was just here. I met her. Chuck, do you have anybody checking in on you? No. I'm by myself. I've been by myself for many years. I just don't worry about it. I don't have any wrist bracelets or do have a phone.
Yeah, go ahead.
That crosses my mind too, not necessarily for me, but people I care about. And how I get over it is I just keep thinking divine order in the fact that my belief would be the soul knows when it came in and it knows when it has to leave, and it's all in order. It's all in the right order it's going to be in.
I like that.
That's how I personally,
I like that.
when I get the anxiety, remember just divine order and the soul knows.
Yeah, beautiful.
It may be one of those things that like so many things in life that we have anxiety where we anticipate, some scenario, but the actual event is is like slipping away. I'm a former nurse, and I know I've been with people in their last moments, and read a lot about, you know, people's experiences of, you know, say coming back from, you know, clinically dead, and almost universally, it's a peaceful, it's that anticipation of event that we always get so worked up about, but the actual, I think that must be built into us. Maybe that's one of those really magical things that's built into this incredible life, is that when the end does come, you're just not even, it's just total peace and quiet. And wherever you go, I have no idea, you know, or nowhere, but I think the actual end is probably the most peaceful part of the process.
I'm remembering Mary Manon Morrissey, who's a New Thought teacher, realized at one point, and when her mother had passed, that her picture, the image that she was holding about death, was it would be long and drawn out and painful. And she realized that, okay, that's the image I'm holding of death. And that's because as a minister, I'm there when people are going through these long and drawn out and painful deaths. But that's not how it is for all people. We had a woman in my congregation, she was a founding member, and she died at 84. One morning, she and her husband they had a back porch and rocking chairs, and their routine was she would have a cup of tea and read the paper, and he would go out and clean up the breakfast dishes. And he went out to clean up the breakfast dishes, and he came back, and her teacup had tipped over, and she was gone, just that quickly and that fast. So to Mary Manon's more, it's like, okay, change my picture of what my passing might look like. And, you know, I know with enough faith, with enough of the Christ-mindedness, we can create that. That's if you're a hardcore unity person, where we create every experience we have. But in my mind, maybe it would sort of give me a different way of thinking about the end when the anxiety arises. And I think maybe would also be a way in which, and maybe this is a different power, help me think through this. Like if what I wanted to do was make sure that the time I had was being as well spent with loved ones I have as possible, then which of these might be helpful for that? Yeah, a lot of them.
I mean, besides love, the center of it. But,
Well, yeah.
yeah, and a will to do that.
An understanding that also incorporates sort of the divine order of things.
An imagination of what I want to create with my family in this part of my life. Like, go ahead.
Well, speaking of imagination, I don't know if anybody knows the Long Island Medium, familiar with that,
Oh, yeah.
but one of the things that, get weird too.
I know.
But one of the things that she said that she picked up with people was that what it appeared was happening on the physical level was not necessarily what they were experiencing on the soul level or on the invisible level. And so even though we're looking at people and we think this is going on and that's going on, their soul maybe already have departed, or in that dying process, they leave, they come back. And to us, it may look like things are one way. Of course, you know, you do what you can to alleviate that discomfort. But to project that everything that I think they're experiencing is exactly what they are actually experiencing, it might not be accurate. So it's just a, you know,
Yeah, I love that.
possibility.
I've heard that also described as like, imagine that you are an embryo in an egg, right? And the world is just coming crashing down. Everything that sustained life to that point is literally disintegrating and breaking through. So, and from the outside, we know, okay, they're being hatched into a new life, but from the inside, and we're sometimes on that inside where what appears to be pain, we don't know what happens on the inside. Thank you, that's beautiful.
It's like what she was saying, you know, in those situations, people who have had, we've read, you know, news stories about people who had incredible traumas, whether they were accidents or, you know, just some near drowning, something, they have no memory of it. I remember many, many years ago being in a car accident, and still to this day, it's so vivid. There was no sound, There was no feeling. It was just like a gap in life. It just didn't even exist. My body didn't feel anything, even though I was thrown out of a car. And the car was total crap. You can imagine the sound and what it felt like to land in somebody's front yard. Felt nothing. Remember nothing except, I think there's a protective mechanism that protects us, that's built into us as humans.
The smart ass in me says, were you drunk?
No, not me, but the drunk driver that hit me was. No, I was just.
Huh. Well, it's that time, or
It is.
I would love to maybe, I don't know how you're feeling. I'm not getting that there's a lot of anxiety around it. I was going to say maybe close with a prayer for Sam and Rushdi's healing.
That would be nice.
But maybe even bigger than that, all our healing. Okay. So let's just move back into that wonderful space of high consciousness, however it is that you do. And we begin by just tuning into what is here and now, this day, this beautiful day, beautiful evening where we're able to spend together with like-minded folks, discussing ways in which we can bring more vibrancy and aliveness to our spirituality and our spiritual lives. And to know that that discussion even has the power to heal and transform, and that it's part of a greater, deeper connection to all that is. And so out of this field of desire to be a channel through which light and love are expressed more fully, we first focus our attention on Sam and Rushdie and his family. That the events of this last Friday can fade in terms of importance, that greater light and healing and influence might emerge. We're grateful for the ideas of inclusivity that Chautauqua institution so clearly supports and extends. We're grateful to be a part of that energy here and now. And we're grateful for the awareness that as we move out from here, the healing that we experience, the prayers that we express and speak, the connections that we make, are part of a greater energy that will truly bring about a deeper expression of love, a broader capacity for understanding, and a more vibrant activation of all the powers that we've studied here this evening, that we might truly be a part of creating a world that works for all. So it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good job.
Good idea.
Bye, Janine.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Two, I need two.